if you've been watching over the past few days, and you haven't, I've found myself in the middle of a battle over American health care. After my son, Billy, had open heart surgery at the end of April, the Senator, Bill Cassidy, from Louisiana, came on our show, made some promises and assurances that he did not keep. The reason I had him on the show in the first place is because he started telling people that any plan he supports would have to pass what he called the Jimmy Kimmel test. And then he teamed up with Senator Lindsey Graham to write a bill that most definitely does not pass that test. It doesn't protect people from having their rates jacked up for pre-existing conditions, doesn't prevent insurance companies from putting lifetime caps on how much they'll spend on a person with medical issues, and it cuts a huge amount of money, but maybe even hundreds of billions of dollars in healthcare funding. And Americans, understandably, especially do not like the idea of being priced out of insurance for a pre-existing condition. So the president got involved last night, via Twitter, of course. He wrote, "I would not sign Graham Cassidy if it did not include coverage of pre-existing conditions. It does. A great bill, repeal and replace." Which, those are the key words, repeal and replace. Because for Donald Trump, this isn't about the Graham Cassidy bill. It's about getting rid of Obamacare, which he hates primarily because Obama's name is on it. He likes to have his name on things, buildings, vodka, you name it. And at this point, he would sign anything if it meant getting rid of Obamacare. He'd sign copies of the Koran at the Barnes & Noble in Fallujah if it meant he could get rid of Obamacare. And then after I accused Bill Cassidy of not telling the truth, the president wrote a tweet of support for him personally. He said, "Senator Dr. Bill Cassidy is a class act who really cares about people and their health care. He doesn't lie. He just wants to help people." So I tweeted back, I wrote, "That's great news, Mr. President. Does that mean he'll vote against the horrible bill he wrote?" And I know you're going to find this surprising. I still haven't heard back on that, but Lindsey Graham, the senator who co-wrote the bill, says Donald Trump is focused like a laser on health care. And I'm guessing he means he's focused in the same way the cats on YouTube are focused on lasers. Chasing around. I guarantee he doesn't know anything about this Graham Cassidy bill. He doesn't know the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. He barely knows the difference between Melania and Ivanka. So this morning, Senator Cassidy, after, there's a lot of interest in this, he went on Fox News to fight back. He again said that I don't understand what I'm talking about because we haven't spoken for a year, which is not true. He was on my show 4 months ago. But I don't know what the point of speaking to him is. We spoke, he told me one thing, he did another. Are we supposed to do that again? Some people tell me I should give him the benefit of the doubt, and you know what? I do give him the benefit of the doubt. I doubt all the benefits he claims are part of the new health care bill. But I do want to say about Bill Cassidy, I do admire what he's done with most of his life. He's a doctor, a gastroenterologist. He founded a community clinic in Baton Rouge. He's done good things. I just want him to keep doing good things. This plan is not a good thing. His supporters say, well, he's a doctor and you're not. What do you know? Well, to them, I say all of these very reputable organizations, American Diabetes Association, American Medical Association, American Cancer Society, American Heart Association, the list goes on and on. All of these groups populated by doctors say this health care bill is bad. They're against it. We haven't seen this many people come forward to speak out against a bill since Cosby, okay? So... And they claim, as the president did, it protects people with pre-existing conditions, but it doesn't guarantee them protection. All you need to know is this. This is how the vice president himself dodged that question this morning on Fox and Friends.
You have folks like Jimmy Kimmel, they're worried about the pre-existing condition thing, because this will be up to the governors to decide how the money's dispersed, who gets coverage. Every state will determine what's best for their folks. But with that, can you guarantee that these governors will make sure pre-existing conditions are covered?
Thomas Jefferson said, government that governs least governs best. I mean, the question that people ought to ask is, who do you think will be more responsive to the health care needs in your community? Your governor in your state legislature, or a congressman and a president in a far-off nation's capital?
Is neither an option? Because I would pick that. I'm pretty sure, by the way, I think he just told us we can't trust the president. Their argument is that it's better to put these decisions in the hands of the states. And I mean, have you seen some of our states? If Florida could make their own decisions, it would be legal to bring an alligator into a strip club, okay? And that doesn't even even take into account the maybe $200 billion in healthcare funding the bill would cut. Even if states did get to decide, that money would go away. And a lot of people have been saying that I'm not qualified to talk about this, and that is true. I'm not qualified to talk about this. But I think those people forget Bill Cassidy named this test after me. Am I supposed to just be quiet about that? Some of these characters they drag out of the swamp to defend this. This morning, Fox had the other senator from Louisiana, John Kennedy, no relation, as you will clearly see. This is what he had to say about me.
Our biggest opponents appear to be, at this point, Senator Bernie Sanders and Jimmy Kimmel. Bernie is Bernie. I don't know Mr. Kimmel. He's a funny guy, but I don't think anybody would confuse him with a well-respected healthcare expert. I wouldn't take advice from Charlie Sheen either.
Listen, lady. I don't know how many times I have to say it. I'm not pretending to be an expert. I'm asking why people like you aren't listening to actual experts like the American Medical Association. And by the way, the fact that Charlie Sheen is still alive means he probably knows more about healthcare than any of us do. But I understand the gist of what he's saying. I should not be the guy you go to for information on healthcare. And if these guys, like inbred John Kennedy, would tell the truth for a change, I wouldn't have to. You know, I see these comments from these angry people. They say, what qualifies you to talk about this stuff? You're a comedian. Go back to being not funny. And I feel like it's my duty to remind these people who are so concerned about my qualifications, the guy you voted for president, his job qualification was this.
Meatloaf, you're fired.
Okay? He fired Meatloaf on television. And then you put him in the White House. So I'm going to say it again. It's more important than ever to call your senators and tell them not to gut American health care, not to turn their backs on people with pre-existing conditions. This number will direct you to your senator. Call him or her. Encourage your friends and family to call. Let me know how it goes. We have until September 30th to try to dodge this bullet. Do you love clicking buttons and subscribing to things? Then click the button to subscribe to my channel, and you'll finally be happy.